Hey there, it is Lisa Danforth, business strategist and leadership vision coach. And today I am here with the fabulous Leora Dowling. She is a dear friend. She is my speaking coach, absolutely phenomenal. And Leora is going to be talking today about best practices for how to connect with your audience via video, when we're on video. With everything that is going on these days, everyone's going virtual, and a lot of us are struggling. Leora and I were actually just sort of laughing before we were going live that we've done this multiple times. It's what Leora teaches. And she was nervous as well. So just keep that in mind. But there's definitely some best practices in order to engage and connect with your audience when we're not going to be able to be live with people. So that is what we're chatting about today. And I would love if you're watching this live or on the replay, please pop below where you're calling in from. Are you from Vermont? Are you from the United States? Where? We'd absolutely love to hear. And today we're actually streaming on LinkedIn Live. We are streaming on Facebook and YouTube, if the technology gods are with us, right? So, Leora, I'm going to hand it over to you. Can you just share a little bit more about yourself, as a public speaking coach, and again, huge art enthusiast. Tell us just a little bit more about you before we jump in so people can get to know your story.
Thanks, Lisa. Yes, I have been speaking my whole life. My father used to call me a chatterbox when I was little, but in Italian, he used to... a Sicilian slang, he called me a chiacchierone, a little chatterbox. And I love to talk, and I'm interested in a whole lot, so I'm usually not too boring. But my first career was broadcasting. I was a DJ when we actually had records, and I did commercials, traffic reports, where I learned to enunciate, because when you have 60 seconds and you're in a plane, you speak quickly and you speak clearly. And then I went back to school and I became a high school teacher, an English teacher. And now I teach at Community College of Vermont very proudly. I teach effective workplace communications and effective public speaking online, which I do in my coaching business as well. I work one-on-one with people and small groups of people to help them improve their public speaking techniques and also overcome fear, which a lot of people have. And as you alluded to, now that we're all working on Zoom or making video recordings to be with family and friends even, there's a lot of things we need to remember so that we're not one of those really boring events that some of us have to go to.
I would love to know, you have been working with a lot of people and through the school, all of this. What are some of the common struggles or fears that people have? I like to kind of call those out because so many of us feel like we should know what we're doing, right? We're networking all the time and now it's just video. We should be comfortable. What are some of the struggles that people have that you're hearing over and over again with connecting to people via video, but also just getting comfortable?
Well, people, that's the question. And how do you get comfortable? That's the number one thing that I hear from students and most of my clients. So I have clients like you who are comfortable, but still get a little nervous. And nerves are good because that means it's important. So if you're a little nervous, it's important. And your ego is not such that you think you cannot make a mistake, which is something I always point out. There's no such thing as perfection when you're doing this. And in fact, being human is more important than being perfect. So people worry about how they're going to be perceived by the audience. That's a big thing. We've been culturally inculcated to think that everyone's judging us by our looks, by our clothes, by our jewelry. And basically, most people are really glad you're the one who's doing the speaking. and they want you to succeed. That's the key. Most people want us to succeed. So if we try to take that old ego stuff out and put in the idea that we can help people with our words if we just show up and smile and are authentic and we know our subject. That's key. If you don't know what you're talking about, you're going to be nervous. So I believe in practice when possible. Obviously, we can't practice today, but both of us have been working in these fields for so long that we know what we're talking about, or we're not embarrassed to say, I don't know, which is also crucial.
I think that's incredibly crucial in anything that we do. Being able to say that, I think actually Pretty much, it claims your expertise that I know what I know, and I'm willing to learn something new, which is just refreshing, I think, instead of always just putting that, well, I think it might be. But great insights. Absolutely. Fear can stop us. And I think that perfectionism piece is a great way. It's real, but it's also a great way for us to stay safe. It's not perfect. I don't have it just right. I don't know what I need to do. One of the things that I recommend, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, when we're going live, when we're feeling like we're not as confident as we'd like to be on video, I recommend people go and get a free Zoom account and just practice and then watch yourself. See if there's a tree climbing out of the back of your head.
I had one earlier today. I moved my tree.
Or the lighting is bad. I know I've got a lot of light here, and the sun will come in sometimes, and literally this side of me is completely white. And when you can watch yourself, the tempo, all that, you can learn from yourself. Is that something that you recommend? And what else
Yes,
could you
I
add to
do.
that?
Absolutely, Lisa. I did that today. That's how I found the tree growing out of my head. I've been working on lights and lighting. I've been working on an easy to look at background. All those things are key, lighting especially. And so the light should be in front of you. I've got it off to the side, but I also have lights in front of me. And still, it's not quite enough because of the shade. As you say, as the day goes on, as the sun moves, or when the leaves fall, I'll have more light. So I have to keep adjusting to my reality and to know and to take the time and to be able to look confused and mumble to myself. I have to do it off camera. And so that's what I did today.
Perfect. A little pre-work, which is always great. So let's jump right in and really start talking about the foundation, the fundamentals, and we're going to work up. So, because there are people who are very experienced, but still would like to kind of tweak and get better. But also there are people who are just struggling with, how do I hit the live button? So can you give a few foundational pieces?
Sure. The first thing I tell any speaker to do is work with your posture. If you sit up straight, you exude more confidence, and smile. That's the other thing. People look to your face. They look at your eyes. They look at your mouth. They look at your posture. Are you exuding confidence? And sometimes you don't have much, but if you pretend you do at the beginning, chances are it'll build and build as you go along. So there's that piece, posture and smile. And then there's what you do with your voice. And just be aware that it's very simple to fall into kind of a monotone, which is what happens when we read off a script. Mm-hmm. So if you listen to yourself and you watch yourself, and to do that, you have to risk being uncomfortable because nobody likes the way they sound or the way they look initially, but you can get used to it and you can improve all those things. So I say, look as good as you can in that moment. Makeup for me, makeup, hair, glasses, whatever, and then forget about it. And then it's all about the audience. So it's just what you can control and then what you can't control.
Right, and letting go. Getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, I think, is a tip, tool, advice, whatever you want to call it, for anything in life. We will not find our brilliance, our zone of genius, in our comfort zone. So in order to get out, in order to engage and connect with our audience, we've got to get uncomfortable. I mean, I've been doing lives or videos for a long time, and it still makes me nervous when I'm hitting live. So getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And those are some great tips. I know I've seen people who are just kind of like slunched over, not really engaged. And it really, it helps. It has the other attendees disengaged as well.
Absolutely. Because there are so many things that get our attention nowadays. I mean, pardon me, I've got a little hair there. There are so many things that get our attention. We've got pets. We've got, if you have a family, you're living with other people. There's phones and our refrigerator calling to us. I mean, there's all this stuff. So how do you get people to pay attention? Mm-hmm. I use, can I shove in this thing about the gift mentality?
Oh,
to me, that is so huge.
Shove away.
Okay. So what I tell everybody, especially nervous people, and anyone can use this, your audience is giving you the most precious thing they have, their time and their attention. Time, you can't get it back. Attention, easy to lose. what gift am I going to give them? So when you do LinkedIn Live with Lisa, you're giving your audience all kinds of incredibly important information to help them grow their businesses, to help them grow their sense of value and their worthiness. You're helping them make money. You're helping them organize all the things you and your guests have talked about. Today, we're talking about how to look your best to make the best impression via video, usually Zoom. So we're giving a gift to the people who are taking their time to watch, giving us the gift of their time. So I really like that symbiotic relationship that's going on between me and whoever you are, and me and you, Lisa. Although the hard thing about Zoom, and this is the caveat, you have to look at the camera. And looking at the camera means I can't look at your face. And if it were live, I could watch everyone in the audience and see how well they're adapting, if they understand, if they're getting bored. I can read the audience really well in person, much harder in a Zoom one-to-one. Now, if it's a group, I can kind of check things out if I have a lot of faces, but it's just me and you, kiddo. So tell me if you need to cut in or something, because I cannot see you. I'm staring at that little light.
Little light.
That little light.
Go towards the light.
It's
So true. And I think that's one of the difficult things as well, is that how do you engage an audience when often you can't really see them? I mean, some people are dialing in via StreamYard and we can see a little icon if they're allowing their photo to be shown. But that is an incredibly difficult thing for us when we're going live, when we're engaging on video, is to how do you keep your energy up and keep your smile going and make sure that you are dynamic, engaging, creative.
Well, can I bust in and tell you how?
Girl.
Put yourself in the position of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been that person knowing, oh my God, another 35 minutes of this. The way you feel, you don't want to do that to your audience. So you have to push yourself to be sitting tall, smiling, energetic. I mean, 15 minutes ago, I was not bubbly like this. Now, this is who I am. This is who I am. I'm not pretending, but for the benefit of people who have distractions and who need and or want to stay engaged, I am upping my game. I always say, be your best you on your best day, because as you said, it's the energy, it's the enthusiasm, it's charisma, and it comes with a smile and a sparkle in your eye and a genuine desire to connect and to assist your viewers or your listeners or your audience. If I can be generous and give you something, then I'm going to be excited, because there's nothing more exciting than giving gifts to people you love, right? I mean, I love it. So I do this.
I also want to highlight the importance of your work with, there's so many businesses, coaches, entrepreneurs doing online training, online classes. So you're literally creating this video, plopping it into like Thinkific or another platform, and to be able to engage and keep the audience, even especially if it's not live, right? So it's a 10-minute video. How do you keep engaged? That this is so incredibly important for those of us who are creating these online courses for training, to be able to engage, educate, bring them in and want to learn more. Can you talk a little bit about that, but also sort of the mindset that we need? I know that's a large component of what gets in our way and also what supports us with this.
Okay, so I'm going to take the mindset first, because I think that's crucial to everything that happens afterward. So I mentioned very early on that culturally we're inculcated not to feel like we're enough, that we're making a mistake just by virtue of being on the planet practically. We're not as pretty or as young or as blonde or as tall or whatever it is that we've been told all our lives. And then if a parent, someone you really loved, told you something hurtful, you bring that to the mix too. So now we're asking you to stand up in front of an audience or get on a camera and not be perfect and go through these mental memories. So what you have to do is really just say to yourself, I am not going to live there anymore. I'm a grown-up and I can change the way I think about me. and you have to work on your self-talk. And I know you do this with your clients, and
I do with myself every day as well,
I
right?
mean, I do
It doesn't
too.
go away.
No, it doesn't, but you can really mitigate it, and you can almost feel it coming on. So change your self-talk. If you're saying, I can't do this, or I'm going to fail at this, that's not really helpful. But also, I love it when people understand that what they have to say, their words, their wisdom, their experience, their stories, when they understand that other people want to hear that, oh man, okay, that validates you and allows you to move forward. And then the next thing is you got to practice. You have to know how you look and how you sound. You have to be alert to what works and what doesn't for your audience and for yourself, but mostly for your audience.
Mm-hmm. Look at where when they're shifting. I think we can sense that energy when we're kind of losing them if we are live on video, and we can see them that they're kind of, going flat. So sensing that and being very aware of how your energy impacts other people's energy.
And I have my problem being half Italian is my hands flutter. I have to pull and I go back and forth. So I'm really working on getting more comfortable when I'm using my hands to bring them up high, because hands really echo. They're really a wonderful way to, I use them as a visual aid, but also I need to bring them down, and I need to not do this, because you work in radio, you can do anything. Television.
Mm.
So I'm working on it too. Everybody is, because trying to be authentic, I think, is more important than trying to be perfectly still and rigid. So maybe I move too much.
Oh, I definitely move too much. And that's one thing that I just want to share as well. A little piece of my story is that I find if time starts to be sort of constrained, or if I'm starting to get nervous, I revert back to my old self, which is talking really fast. I do everything fast. So it's taken years for me to be able to slow down, speak more slowly so that people can hear what I'm saying, articulate it. But when I start to get nervous, or when I'm feeling some time constraints of I need to get my message across in this 2-minute video, I can sense myself speaking really fast, and it's hard to hear someone, especially when we want to be mirroring. So if there are people in our community, in our audience that move a little bit slower, speak a little bit slower, we need to be able to hit that nice medium stride so that we're hitting the people who need a little speed, and we're also still engaging the people who want to go a little bit slower. But for me, you can sense when I'm getting a little nervous when my tempo really picks up. I have friends who used to call me the squirrel, that animal that in the middle of the road that was like, where do I go? That was me, my squirrel. I was just always flying around. So it's taken a lot of expertise working with Leora to,
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to be present, and your voice will get higher when you're nervous. Constricts, and then you have a higher sound. Now, most of us if we have that high sound, we're talking to people who don't know what we sound like. If it used to be anyway, when we did live events, not everyone knew what you sounded like. So don't fret about that. There are ways to work on your voice. Can't cover that all now. And in fact, that's something I do want to interject. It's super important, because it's what we all do. We put too much information in, and we decide, I'm going to share so much stuff with my audience. But the audience gets burned out. There's just so much that they can absorb. That's why it's good to tell stories like you just did. And squirrel, I'm going to remember that one, because it's a visual. We think in stories, and we think in images very often. So you just gave us a really good image of,
or a not so good image.
Well, no, squirrels are nice. They're pretty, and they're very graceful. I like their tails, and you can even hear them chew. I was out walking the other day, and there was a squirrel, and he got lucky, and he was eating, and it was so adorable, and he was so intent, and he wasn't afraid of me. But anyway, that's my little squirrel story for today. They used to be pets, by the way. They used to be pets in colonial America. Squirrels were pets like cats and dogs. I know a lot of stuff. I learned that at Shelburne Museum. You mentioned art earlier. Working at Shelburne Museum for a number of years as a guide, I learned about squirrels being personal pets.
And speaking of guide, I think that's actually a nice topic that we can sort of go down this little alleyway that we're going to go down right now, or hallway about guides, people who are no longer in the presence of others, right? So we're not showing whether it's art, whether it is, touring around, because I know there's a lot of museums that are doing just virtual tours.
Right.
What can people do that always used to spin? And I know that this is the general topic of engaging the audience, but what are a couple of tips that you could recommend for people who are going through a sort of, not a tutorial, but this piece of art is this, and this piece of art is this, to help them engage, whether it's art, whether it's a museum, whether it's teachers teaching their students and how do we do that? Yeah, that's you, right?
Yeah, that is me. Yeah. So obviously, I have to slow down. I have to repeat. So I have to go over what I've covered periodically, because when people are listening to something live, they can't rewind it. So the important thing should be, okay, we're going to start talking about this. We just covered that. Now we're moving to this. I like to do that to help them know where we're going. And I also like to talk about it at the beginning. So, hey, you guys, today we're going to talk about best practices for using Zoom or other video equipment to make videos for your audience, for your colleagues, for your coworkers, for your family. So that tells people the wheelhouse we're going to be in. And then from there, it's our job to explain, illustrate, review, illustrate, and move forward at a pace that's there's a word, it's up there, palatable, not too fast. We don't want to overwhelm. So yeah, that's what we're doing. And if you're talking about art or you're recapping a family story, just so long as you know what you're talking about, it really helps to have the vocabulary of whatever it is. So the vocabulary of computers, the vocabulary of sport, the vocabulary of art, whatever it is, use it. And if you're using it with people who don't know that area, then you jump in and you define things. Sometimes you have to go all the way back because you have to realize your audience, as you did earlier, is in various stages of learning and discovery and mastery. So, hey, if you're at the beginning, lighting, if you're at the beginning, speaking and enunciating, posture, smiles, but then it gets more complex. Is that the answer to your question?
I think it answers a lot of questions. You've put a lot of wonderful information in there. So let's take that. You just did a beautiful summary, right? And moving into that next phase. So if you've got the lighting and you've got the foundation, the fundamentals down, what's the next step for people who have those in place, but would still like to up their game, which is why I'm working with you. I feel comfortable on camera. I'm understanding the lighting and whatnot, but I want to take it up a notch.
Okay, so this is where you have to, again, get in the mindset of the audience. So what is the audience asking him or herself? What is that person thinking? Gee, how did that turn out? So if you start a story, you've got to end a story. If you have a tagline, you have to use it at the beginning and the end. So if you're doing what you're doing, LinkedIn Live, you got to promo next week's show. So they're all different things that you add strategically, where there's a lull in conversation, for instance, or you want to shift topics. You say, oh, let's just take a moment and whatever, and then you can shift topics. And that works out very, very nicely. Silence is also an effective thing to use. Being quiet. Okay, here it is. Pretend you're singing. Your voice should be doing things that an instrument would do because it is an instrument. So your voice is going up and it's coming down and it's stopping and it's getting faster and it's getting louder and it's getting softer. Those keep your audience interested. And those are the subtle, sophisticated ways that real masterful speakers see. Now, this is a mistake. It's a great ringtone, but I should have turned it off. Yeah, it's my jazz.
Lesson learned, right?
I've learned this lesson before. Why don't I really learn it? I don't know.
So I'm going to just jump in a quick second and look at and see, because again, we're streaming. We have one person joining us from Facebook.
Yay.
Let's see. And I'm not seeing any questions yet, but I'm sure that there still will be, because I've got LinkedIn here, I've got Facebook here. Modern technology, it's just amazing, isn't it? The different things that we can do. So,
and remember, I'm a little younger than you by about 10 years, I think. Older than you, sorry. Boy, that was... And when I was a kid, like Star Trek showed us these flip phones, and we were going to be talking to each other using these and being able to see. Alas, decades have transpired. So now that we can use them to look at each other and talk, I don't want to look. Just listen to your voice. And your voice really is, your body language and your voice are the things that make the biggest impact. It's not really your words, it's your voice. So if it's warm and inviting and energetic and upbeat, if you're smiling and you're engaging, you're leaning in, that's one of the terms you use a lot, leaning in. If you're doing that, people will be very interested and they'll hear your message more easily. They'll be awake for it at least. Whereas if you're just trying to cover information and you're going to plow through it no matter what, that's when you lose people. Nothing but facts.
And I want to jump in and share a little bit. I know we discussed this briefly in last week's live with Kate Payne, is make sure that your camera, that there's a good picture, and it's not bouncing. So if you are on your phone and you're recording, or you make people sick to their stomach by watching you bounce around the screen. Put it onto a little arm so that you can keep it. And I always when I'm doing that, I'll put my elbow into my body and hold it out so that the picture is steady. So you may have the aesthetics down, but if you're bouncing around within the frame of the camera, you're definitely going to lose your audience and have a difficult time engaging them. Same thing with audio.
Oh, yeah.
If it's crackling in and out, that's really tough as well. So test all of those things. And can you talk a little bit more about, you mentioned a few moments ago about how to illustrate. I'm kind of circling back. I just looked at a note that I made, how to illustrate when on camera. That one sort of caught me. I was like, how does one illustrate?
So, and you're doing it naturally, and I tend to do it naturally with our arms. So, yeah. So people for years used PowerPoint and they used bullets, and that was it. They stood in the dark and hoped everyone stared at the screen. But what you're doing when you're using your upper body or walking around is you can really talk and illustrate as you go along. So if I talk about something being really, really important, I lean in and I can do something with my fingers. It's huge. And if I were on a stage, my arms would be way out and I'd be leaning in. Open arms. And so I always say, don't be a T-Rex. So a T-Rex is just moving like this. Everything's connected. I look goofy, but I don't care. So what you want to do is you open your arms out and you have your palms up. And these are symbols of trust and openness on your part. And for the audience, they're going to be more open and more trusting of you because you're doing that. But when I talk about small things or I talk about everyone, I use my arms, not in a corny way, and I don't overdo it, but I use it to echo or illustrate what I'm talking about. And the same thing with slides. Nowadays, your best slide just has an image on it or a big number or a quote.
Right. And then that's exactly, you don't want to put a whole paragraph on there because that's a great way to lose the people simply because they're reading it. So they're not listening to what you're saying. I just want to stop real quick. And Michelle Audette, thank you so much for joining us. And great tips all around. Any ideas on best ways to engage older adults? How do you project the senses so that they can get a feel for a subject like a garden tour? Excellent question, Michelle. And Leora is going to be all over this one, I know.
Absolutely. So the older we get, the more time it takes for us to process information. Also, the older we get,
That explains a lot.
yeah, it really does. And people with accents, it takes us even longer to, pull out what we're trying to hear and understand. And then most of us, many of us, like 30 million, should be wearing hearing aids, and we're not. So you have to assume someone who's older has some hearing loss, and it's usually in the upper register, so the female voices or small children's voices, unless they're screaming. So what you want to do if you're outdoors in a garden is you want to make sure you're only talking to people when they can look at you and watch your lips. Now, that's what's so problematic about wearing masks, because if you're wearing a mask, people can't read your lips. And a lot of older people, we look at the lips to figure out what's being said. You talk slowly and you watch the eyes. Do they understand? And also, what are they leaning in? I mean, I've done things like this and people haven't noticed that.
Oh, wow.
So ask, can you hear me? Do you understand? Repeat the same thing in a number of ways. Define your words parenthetically, but don't rush with an older crowd, physically, in person, or on camera. And then make sure, flowers, use the Latin term, use the common term, and tell them what they want to know. Will it grow in this zone? Does it need full sun? Does it need to be watered every day? Think about what their questions will be, and then answer them before they ask them. People don't like to admit they don't know, and people have trouble saying, people are so polite, and people are insecure. So
Say they also don't want to draw attention to themselves. I think it's a really big piece. Yeah.
Hope that helps.
This is also on, she said this is also on Zoom. So how to engage.
Yes. So on Zoom, you do the exact same thing. You would speak slowly and enunciate correctly, and then call their attention to what you want them to see. Now, don't treat them like they're not capable of understanding. Just patient and with the same enthusiasm you would use any other way. Hopefully, I still sound as animated and as excited as I did a minute and a half ago, but I'm speaking more slowly. Still smiling, still excited to tell you about how to make a garden in your pot, how to put herbs in your food every night because you're growing them on your porch. So you're smiling, you're explaining, and use slides if you have to. If there's steps, you can go over them verbally and then have them written down. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Take them through it, answering the questions that they would have before they even asked them. And then check, is that okay? Do you understand?
And also, I would say ask if you are going live on Zoom and you're posting about it, like I've posted a bunch about Leora, our LinkedIn Live, and you could easily put in questions. Do you have any questions? Here are the top 3 things that we're going to be covering. Is there something specific that you'd like to make sure that I approach and cover in the conversation? And that's a way of really inviting people into the conversation and engage, rather than, that's just what she's going to be teaching. But we always want to have a little bit of a CTA, what's called a call to action. Right. So what are some different ways that you have found, whether it's live and in person last year or now that people kind of lean in, they become a little bit more curious. Be aware of, as Leora has been saying, people's body. Are they leaning in? Are they leaning away? Do their eyebrows go up because that's interesting and they want to hear more? Are they kind of furrowed, or which means that they're sort of checking out?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Great. Michelle said, awesome. Rhonda said, great advice, Lee, as always.
Thanks, Rhonda.
It is like we said in the copy for this, is a lot of what we're doing, it's still the same. It's just we get nervous and we shift up how we're showing up, how we're engaging with people. We think that we need to be different. And that's one thing that I'll say, and I'd love your input on this, Leora, is the more I've done video, the more live I've been out and doing, the more I'm understanding it's just me being me. It is just looking at the camera, which is a little uncomfortable. But when you can think about and picture like you're talking to the person specifically, that helps me to have the conversation, to be curious, to invite you to participate.
Absolutely. You are being you. You're just being a little brighter and more bubbly you. You're your best you on your best day because you have something to say or share, and you don't want the people who are listening to miss it.
Mm-hmm.
They're giving you their time and their attention. You're giving them the most easily understood and easily implemented thing that you possibly can. So immediately you can sit up straight and you can smile. Boom, like that. You're going to feel better. In fact, you walk into a room doing that, it's going to change the energy in the room and it'll change your mood. You don't feel so wonderful. Just start to smile and stand tall. It will impact everything.
Have you heard of, I'm going to interject really quickly here, of Amy Cuddy? I cannot remember the name of her book or her YouTube video. It's one of the most watched videos. Presence, right? And it's the Superman pose of when we, right? So when we're going live, or when we have to sort of pull in a little bit of more extra energy to put ourselves out there, to literally, when you stand and make yourself bigger, just like animals do when they're needing to appear bigger, if they're in a battle or what, they kind of puff up. It actually changes chemicals within our brain that brings us into having more confidence. So that's definitely, thank you for letting me jump in, Leora, but that popped in a little while ago and I didn't mention it. So,
well, Amy Cuddy's videos was the second most popular video ever on TED Talks. Mm-hmm. And I give it to every class at the very beginning of the semester and to most of my clients, because she does talk about your arms up like this. This is the starfish pose. And you're supposed to hold them up there for 2 minutes. Well, my arms presence, exactly. My arms get sore after about 1. So then I go back there and I need to exercise more. And then I go to the waist and I talk to myself the whole time. And it's really goofy that I still do that, but I do. And it makes me feel better. And it's totally, it's totally intangible, but people can feel it when you walk into a room and you sparkle. And she's talking about it in relation to jobs, getting a job, for instance. But I know that my students, the ones that I remember years after I had them in class, are the ones who sat up, the ones who looked engaged, even if they were just pretending, and the ones who participated. They were brave enough to participate. So Amy Cuddy does talk about that. And she got a little flack from the scientific community. Did you know this story? A lot of the men, no offense, gentlemen, but a lot of her male colleagues were really bothered by her instant celebrity, her youth, beauty, etc. And they gave her flack and they said, we can't recreate these. And she just took a battering on Twitter and social media. And she set out to recreate and redo her original research. She's at Harvard, so the pressure is on. And she was able to recreate it. She didn't back down. She didn't curl up into a little ball. She absolutely just went out there and she proved that, yes, it does raise your testosterone and lower your cortisol, your nervousness, and raise that power thing. And it's subtle and it's wonderful.
Yeah, so check out the book or check out the TED Talk. One thing, and Rhonda asked a question which I want to get to as well. And one thing I just want to add to that, Michelle, your question is one of the things that I find to be super helpful when I'm giving a presentation, because again, most people don't want to be the first one asking a question. So I have a list of three to five questions that I ask, and I'll say, does anyone have any questions? And I'd say at least 50% of the time, no one does. So I'll say, well, you hear a couple of questions that I hear over and over again, and I'll put it out there and I'll talk about it. And then someone else will raise their hand, and then someone will raise their hand, right? So it's a way to engage in a way that you're essentially being the first one to ask. So I'm going to pop Rhonda's up here. How many key points would you suggest covering in a single class or presentation that is 1 hour long?
I would, it depends on your audience. And that's always the jumping off point for everything. So if you're talking to people who are experts in a field and are used to being in classes, they're used to studying, graduate students, people who are very adept at focusing and paying attention, then you can talk about more stuff. But if you're talking to average people, people who know it, but it's not their life's work, less is more. Mm-hmm. So 5, 10, but 5 and examples. I would go with less and then illustrate. So I'm talking about one topic, and now I'm going to show you a visual. Now I'm going to give you some factual numbers. Now I'm going to tell you a personal story that all relate to that concept. And that will dig it into the brain of the people who are listening. And the reason that I say less is more is studies have shown that your audience is only going to remember about 25% of what you say within 48 hours. Because when this ends, you go off on your day and you start doing other things. And then you'll go home, you'll sleep, you'll wake up tomorrow, and more of what we're talking about will be gone. And as far as notes go, we all take notes, we all get handouts, and then what? They wind up in a pile and they're never referenced again. So it's my job to get the most important thing in. So decide what you want people to know, to take away. This is my goal, to get this out there, to have them walk away with this. This is the secondary goal. And then everything else brings them there. And you and I talked about backward design, Lisa. You have it, you say, by 10 o'clock a.m., they're going to know this, and we're starting at 9. So you chunk it out into sections. I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this, and the next thing you know, it's 10 o'clock. So you'll really be surprised that you can't fit as much as you thought into an hour-long conversation.
Less is definitely more. Here's one thing that I'm going to recommend as a business strategist. I work with a lot of people on presentations and putting things together. Is create what's called a storyboard and get your main topics down on the storyboard, and then put your bullets in below them. And it's so that you can actually look. I use sticky notes and I put it up on a wall so I can see it, so that you can practice it on video so you can see how long it's going to be. But here's one of the huge things that I have implemented into when I give workshops and webinars and whatnot is, let's say I'm talking about my program that's a 7-step program. Here's session 1, here's module 1, module 2, and module 3. What I'll do is introduce all of them. But today we only have an hour, so I'm going to go deep on the first 2. And if we have time at the end, we can dig deeper into other ones, or I'll be able to answer your questions. So you are offering some additional information so that you can kind of put it in the back of their mind, but that you can go deep on a couple so that they'll have more tangible things to implement, right? Instead of just all of this knowledge with no real tools on what to do with it. Just take a couple, dig deep on those. And if there's time at the end, because the worst thing that you can do is have an hour workshop and you've only covered one topic and you're 45 minutes in, and then you start scrambling and then nothing comes together and there's no cohesiveness through the end. So really take some time to storyboard the message that you want to get across, put all of your different points within there, record it on Zoom so that you can time it, and then choose just a couple of them to go deep on. But again, have like I said with Michelle, have some things at the other end that if you have time that you can pull up and talk about, but you don't have to cover them. So you're not scrambling, and then you don't look professional when you are not, able to articulate and get across everything that you said that you were going to. Is that helpful, Rhonda? Okay, awesome. I'm going to wait for her to type in. So thank you. Great questions, ladies. So we are just about 15 minutes away from the top of the hour. What other brilliance would you like to share? Mind-blowing things that you like to share with the community, because there's just so much for us to learn about this. And we
Okay. Okay, I can share a couple things. So bright colors are good. Bright colors are good. And you should wear, I can't hear you. All of a sudden your voice went away.
thank you, Rhonda. I was sort of putting a thumbs up, and because she said yes, that was helpful.
Okay. Okay. So I couldn't hear you, but you heard me, and so did you who were watching.
I wasn't muted. I was just mouthing.
Yeah, that's fine. So bright colors are your best option. A blazer. I have one, doesn't fit anymore. But if I put it on while I'm sitting in the chair, you're not going to notice that I can't button it, right? So there's that. Make sure your photo is pretty good, like when you're working on Zoom, so that when you have to get up and you don't want to show people your pajama bottoms, put the photograph up there when you walk away to use the bathroom or get another cup of coffee. People shouldn't know about that. Something that I do, and I don't know if anybody else does, there are no lenses here. I have a couple of, I'm wearing contacts with my glass. I've always worn glasses, and they're kind of a signature thing. So I wear them, and they also make you look smarter, as one presidential candidate tried. And not this time around, but in the past. Don some glasses, let your hair go gray. These are all things that bestow a sense of wisdom and intelligence on you. Surprise, wearing makeup shows that you're interested enough to look your best. Putting on a little jewelry says I took a little time. So even if it's a morning meeting and it's not important, if you feel like you look pretty good and you showed up looking your best, then you'll feel better and you'll have more energy and you'll be more likely to sustain the posture and the smile. The other thing is I use scarves. That's kind of something, if this were live, I'd be wearing a scarf right now, but just a little color. So if this were a white shirt or a black shirt, and all I have to do is add this little pop of color. And I think it's more interesting to see color. And there's no debris behind me or you. I've watched videos as a professor at CCV that students will make a video and they'll have piles of dirty laundry, things hanging on the walls. Honestly, it's wild that they wouldn't think we would notice. But over the course of an hour, even a course of 8 minutes, people are going to look around the room and they're going to judge you on your surroundings as well as the way you look. And we don't like that, but that's the bottom line. So do your best, forget about it, and then have fun. That's the other thing I would say. Have fun. I'm having fun. Hopefully you're having fun, Lisa, and anybody who's watching is having fun. Public speaking should not be a chore. It should be something you look forward to. And the more people, the better, because your message is reaching more ears and you're helping more lives. How fantastic is that? That's great.
But I agree with you 110%. But the first few times you're going to go live, it's not going to feel like fun. You're going to be like, oh, Lord have mercy. It's like, oh.
You're going to be very nervous and you're not going to like what you did. So here's the other thing I say to clients. At 11 o'clock tonight, the only person thinking about this is going to be me and you, Lisa. And if we're smart, we won't be. We will have evaluated, pulled out what worked, determined what didn't work, and try not to do it next time and move on. But I have personally carried around the memory of a bad speech for years and years and years. And I apologized to someone 5 years after the fact. I said, well, one night I did a speech and it was I was so selfish talking about my dad the whole time. And he went, I don't remember.
Yeah, you carried it and
I carried it. Well, I finally let it go. Yay for me. And that's the thing. People are thinking about themselves. They have their own lives. So you do your best to make an impression. And if it's a work-related event, you want to stand out. You want the boss, the manager, your colleagues to see you as successful, capable, alert, and competent. So why would you want to shrink up in the shade when you can be like Marvin? It doesn't make
Marvin.
sense.
I love the
Marvin,
way. What's the
I
other
don't,
word that you say often? Golly.
I
Golly?
say golly, I say jeepers.
Jeepers, that's it.
Yeah,
So I just
yeah.
want
And
to add
say,
to two things that you had just spoken about, just to sort of augment those. One, with your scarf, if you are bulk producing videos, let's say you have a program that you're producing, or maybe you have a content calendar and you want to put out one video a week, but it's just 2-minute videos, you can wear the same shirt, or you can wear the same shirt and change your scarf. So it sort of just shifts it up a little bit. And that sort of separates it out. You don't have to always be going in and changing. So the scarf was such a great idea. And look at me with my hands going absolutely everywhere.
scarves are great. That's okay. I've been doing it. Now you got it. You got that. You got that.
So the other thing I want to share, and it's not such a great story, but I think it's incredibly important. It's not such a fun story, but I think it's so important. I was on a group coaching call I was being coached, and there was several of us, and there was one woman, I think she must have been on her phone on Zoom. She went in and she could only see the speaker because it was on speaker view. She could only see the person speaking. She couldn't see herself. So she thought that the rest of us couldn't see herself. And she actually went into the bathroom and used the bathroom while the camera was going. Again, not a really great story necessarily, but understand that just because you might not be able to see yourself if you're on Zoom, that doesn't mean that other people can't see you. So like Leora said, make sure that when you log in, you have your photo of you if you don't want to be on camera, or just flip the camera upside down so people can't see you. Those little things, it sounds so silly, right? Like, who would do that? Intelligent woman. She is an expert in her field, but didn't realize it. So as we're leaning into more and more video and being live, those little things definitely make a difference.
They do. And like, I forgot to turn off my phone today. No one calls me, but someone called me today. So there it is. I'll learn, I hope. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to tell you, Lisa, and it's gone.
You know what, why don't you think about it? I am going to talk about next week's LinkedIn Live, which I'm super excited about. Nicole Lewis-Keeper, who is a business therapist. I love it. Business therapist and mindset coach. She is a kick-ass coach. Absolutely love her. And she is one of the topics she's going to be talking about, really, she talks about trauma and how childhood trauma impacts our business as entrepreneurs. All of that childhood trauma. And it might be, she talks about the little T, the little trauma. It doesn't have to be anything major, but you sort of alluded to that in the beginning, that it's the lens through which we see and experience life. And that impacts how we're showing up. It impacts our business, it impacts our lives, and it impacts our bottom line. So I'd love to have you join next Thursday, which is October.
I have no idea.
The 10th.
The 10th?
September 10th at noon. Nicole Lewis-Keeper. Again, she is a business therapist and mindset coach. Absolutely fascinating. And then, Leora, is there anything else? Where can people get a hold of you, get in touch with you, learn a little bit more about your services?
Sure. So my friends call me Lee, but Leora is such a great name that I use that in my business. So I have a Leora Dowling LinkedIn page account. I've got one on Facebook. I've got, I've got Instagram and, YouTube, but call me, text me, I'm available and I love to talk to people. And nowadays I do my coaching online, emails, telephone, but I especially love working with Zoom and listening to the stories that I hear, which often have little bits of trauma embedded in them that hold us back from being our best. So yeah, just get a hold of me, Leora Dowling, LeoraDowling.com. Leora at leoradowling.com. Find me, track me down.
She is all over social media, definitely. So thank you so much, Leora. I really appreciate it. It is. We're coming to an end. I just want to sum it up. The best practices. We talked about attitude and mindset and how that impacts how we're showing up and how we're able to really engage our audience. Being seen, heard, and remembered. The light, the sound, all those things. Not being bland, making sure that your background does not have a tree rolling out of your head or anything, some grooming and whatnot. You don't have to go above, way beyond, but just some things that show that you are taking pride in yourself and you're showing up for your community. Working with your voice, making sure that the tempo, the level, all of that is so important in the way that we are able to engage and keep our audience engaged. Using your face and upper body, which Leora and I have no problem doing. Effective slides, you only touch on that a little bit, but just some simple slides to get you going. And then making sure that you recap everything that you went through, because people only remember a very small amount of what it is. So please check out Leora, check out her LinkedIn page, all of her different social media pages. Thank you, Rhonda and Michelle. I'm going to throw this up here. Thank you, Michelle. Great. And if you have any additional questions, or for those of you who are watching on the replay, please be sure to post your comments, tag either Leora or myself. Mostly Leora, because she is so the expert here in this whole engaging the audience on video. But if you have any questions, please post. I look forward to seeing you next week with Nicole Lewis-Keeber. Leora, I can't thank you enough for sharing your brilliance and your humor and just your beautiful energy. And I just want to say, to your success.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.